Hello, fellow travelers, and welcome to another episode of Vertical Stars Podcast 4th season. My loyal listeners, thank you for continued support. Enjoy this amazing episode because Geoffrey Thorne returns to the mothership to discuss X-Force 300 and what's next. Now, come aboard and go traversing the stars. Hello, Mr. Thorne. Thank you for coming back to the Traversing Stars Podcast.
Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure.
Like I said, you're one of my favorite guests, so thank you so much. So,
Ha!
so we're going to talk again about X-Force, and so now that you've had almost a year to um, jump into the X-Men universe, what has that experience been like?
Delightful. Um, I have nothing but good things to say about it. I know that's going to sound like I'm shilling, but I'm not. If I didn't enjoy it, I'd say that too. Um, Gail and Jed and Eve are sort of running the flagship books. All the rest of us are sort of doing our own little satellite books. And I guess the old guys had a Slack channel. We have a Discord channel. And we were all up in each other's biz. And what's coming is going to be fantastic, I think. I think I had a great experience. I'm currently having a great experience. I would say at my time at Marvel, this is probably the best job I've had at Marvel of all the jobs. Um, Mark Basso's a great editor to work with. He loves the stuff, and if and when we butt heads, it's writer and editor trying to figure out the best thread rather than two personalities like going at each other, which it can be, and I don't like that. This is much more like what's the best way we can thread this needle, and I like working with him. He is great, and I think he is overworked and needs an assistant and probably a pay raise. Um, the other creators are great. I always love Gail. I've been a fan of Gail's writing years, um, years and years and years and years. And I like Jed's ideas. I like the way he's executing. I think the From the Ashes initiative, following Krakoa, it's the curse of Age of Ultron following Avengers. Like, what were we going to do that was going to please everybody? Nothing. Like, no way. All the people who are mad about Krakoa being gone are going to come in hating us, and all the people that were like, "Well, I don't care now that Krakoa screwed everything. I don't care anymore. What do it's not exciting enough. You know, why did you just spit on Krakoa the whole time? We hated them. You should hate them too. It's a rock and a hard place. And I'm gonna say that as a sort of like, oh, poor us, because I think they're doing some really excellent work. I think time will tell for some of them. But yeah, my personal experience has been nothing but aces. I got to work with some great creators, Marcus Toad, Chef's Kiss. I've partnered with him on any project ever. Um, uh, uh, it is just, and Eric is a great, fantastic colorist. Like, we make a good team. I like it. I haven't I've enjoyed working with all the teams I've worked with. I think the synergy that I have with these guys is similar to the synergy I had with the Mosaic guys and with the Green Lantern guys. I just felt like we're all in the same car. Let's go. You know, my scripts always start out tight when there's a illustrator I've not worked with before, and they get looser and looser as I start to figure out how they think, and they start to say, "Oh, he's not a jerk," and whatever. So Marcus is aces, just aces, 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 aces. Nothing but good things to say about that guy. Uh, and the only regret is we didn't get those extra 5 issues.
Hmm.
That's it, 5 or 6
Now,
issues.
now you've been on the show. This is your fourth time on the show. I
Mhm.
feel like I've asked 3 times about the identity of Tank. I feel like that's been like a recurring conversation that we've been having for three other episodes now.
Yeah,
And
but
now
okay,
we can have the conversation.
all right. So thanks, Colossus. Um, but the way he ends up in the book is, will you? No one else is using Peter. Do you mind using Peter? And I'm like, not at all. Let's have him. Let's try to do something interesting with it. Um, if you notice, the press and guys like you made a huge deal about who the hell is Tank. I personally did not make a big deal about it. either in the book or in the press. I answered questions, but I was not like the secret of Tank, right? And if you look at it, the first thing he does is maneuver L, right? Which it's not, I'm not hiding it. That's maneuver Logan. And what does Colossus do with Logan? Fastball specials. What does he do with Deadpool? He throws him in fastball special style into the mouth of this guy. So that's the first clue. The next clue was um, he when Sage is assessing his abilities, she specifically lists Russian things that like Russian martial arts, blah blah blah, right? The weaponry was some Russian thing, I think, right? The third thing was in the X-Men book, we see the hand of Colossus playing long distance chess with his little sister. The rest of him's off panel. You just see his hand, and then in X Force, you see Tank playing computer chess with someone who's not with him, right? And from my point of view, also his gear is very reminiscent of the way Colossus looks in Age of Apocalypse, right? It's none of these things are accidental. So from my point of view, we're like, hey, that's Colossus the whole time, right? We have one moment where Rachel and Betsy are saying, who's this Tank guy, right? Can't read his mind. Maybe he's a robot. No more is made of this after that. No one is discussing this, partly because even though there's a month between books, as I've said before, after they land in Japan in issue 1, the next 4 issues, 3 days at most. They're basically in the plane or fighting for the next 3 days after that big monster in not Tokyo, in Japan. So there's not a lot of time to sit around and discuss stuff or Tank. Like, there's just no time for that. Like, you're licking your wounds or you're getting in a fight, So there was more to it. The way that was going to be revealed was going to be totally different. There is a character that never made it into the book anymore because of those five issues being gone. A character called Gladius, who was going to ultimately reveal that Colossus was Tank by battling with him, and clothing was going to get ripped and he was going to have to but poor Gladius will never arrive. We'll never see Gladius. So we had to do that to basically, I was never going to leave him in that condition. And since I only had a couple of issues left to get him out of it, just like, fine, he's out. It sucks. I agree. It's too rushed, but it was either that or leave him as unknown Tank forever. And I just couldn't stand the idea of that. So that's what happened.
Now, were we going to find out the exact why of Tank?
Yes. And I don't want to overplay that because I still have the Hellfire Vigil coming up. So maybe we should revisit after that.
Okay, one more time, the Hellfire Vigil.
The Hellfire Vigil, I have a chapter in that. Okay. And I would rather not talk too deeply about some of these characters because, like, there's characters that absolutely I'm not writing into the Hellfire Vigil, but Peter is one of the people that's going to be in that story. So
Peter as Tank.
Peter.
Okay, so once he has revealed himself as Colossus, he does not go back to Tank as far as your...
Well, here's an interesting question. He just takes off the mask and says, my name is Peter Rasputin, I want my face back. If Marvel wants him to continue to call himself Tank, I'm all for it. And if he wants to go back to calling himself Colossus, that's fine too. Tank was always a placeholder identity for reasons. So remember the character from the Avengers, Ronan? There's a character called Ronan in the Avengers. Okay. He's not a real character. It was always some other character masquerading as this second character, right? So Tank's kind of like that. Like, other people could theoretically be Tank if they wanted. But if Marvel likes him as Tank better, if the fans like him as Tank better, he got some better equipment. One of the things that bugged me about Peter all these years is, and it's not anyone's particular fault, he was created to be a basically nice man with super strength, essentially. Basically indestructible and super strength. But he wasn't anybody's genius, right? He wasn't a tactical anything. He wasn't like a martial artist. He was the tank.
Yeah.
That's it. And whenever he was powered down, it's like, I like to paint. I'm in love with Kitty. Everyone's saying he's too old for her. I'm like, he was 17, she was 15 when they met.
Right.
Like, but he's so, I'm like, yeah, he's a mutant. He's a 17-year-old boy who looks like a gigantic man.
Hmm.
Kitty is age appropriate looking, but they're actually roughly the same age. So shut up. Right. He wasn't even over the line. He was not an adult teenager when she was a teenager. They were both teenagers when they met. So shut up. Okay. But that's really all there was to him, aside from being constantly mind controlled and turned into a villain by
Right.
people. And I was like, this is not really fair. The same thing I don't think is fair for a lot of these secondary characters was not fair for Colossus. So as soon as I had him in the book, a person I'd never really considered before, I was like, all right, we're fixing this. And the first stage of that fix was Tank. Tank is this direct response to what happened in Krakoa to Peter. Peter has been mind controlled and made into somebody else's weapon more times than I remember, like a lot. Um, I don't think that that would sit well with anyone. I think that would be. I don't want to say it's like rape because nothing's like rape, but if that kept happening to me, it would start to make me think about myself. Like, what's wrong with me that people can keep doing this particular thing to me?
Right.
Right. So that's where Peter is when we meet him. Why he's being Tank has to do with that. He did a lot of dastardly crap under mind control, certainly, but still he was aware that he was doing it. So he had the front row seat to every bad thing he did, even if he wasn't in control.
Yeah.
It made him feel weak. I couldn't break out of it. I couldn't assert myself in any way against this bad stuff I was being made to do. Yeah, I'm sorry. That's going to give you some PTSD, folks. So, and it takes a minute to get over that stuff. Certainly longer than through the 3 days that he was pretending to be Tank.
Well,
Like,
I think it was kind of interesting because when you were writing, when in X Force, issue 9, I believe issue 9 he first appears in issue 10, the bad Colossus guy. Is
yeah,
that something that it so made sense that he was there that you're thinking, yeah, Colossus is doing bad things at this in there, these couple of issues. And I was like, all right, fine, because you just kind of accept that,
yeah, because so many people have made Colossus somebody's evil tool.
right,
That of course you would fall for that.
right.
Of course, I mean, I don't. Is it trolling or is it me knowing that the audience expects this of Colossus right now? Like,
I don't think it's trolling. I do feel like there's a point that was made by doing it, which is like,
yeah,
see
yeah.
the problem here, guys.
Listen, one of the things about okay, From the Ashes has a lot against it for all the sort of meta outside the box reasons, basically having to do with the audiences that they're trying to juggle.
Mhm.
Automatically a heavy lift, no question. But Krakoa was a gigantic event that actually occurred in the Marvel universe. Like, it has fallout, right? How each individual and how each team chooses to deal with that fallout is up to the creators and the editors and all of that. My particular group definitely is feeling the effects of that event. Rachel got killed during that event. Betsy's unhappy about it. Um, Peter was made to do hideous things, betray his friends during that event. He feels some kind of way about it. When we meet Sage, the fact that it all fell apart has cracked her mind,
Hmm.
right? And Forge, when we meet him, he's sitting there sulking, watching game footage of all the other X-Men ever, going, what the hell? I got to get my feet under me. Here's how I'm going to do it.
Hmm.
And then we get Sage, who had been kind of, I mean, Surge, who'd been kind of a firebrand, right? Sort of bucking Charles Xavier and all that stuff. But she also went through all that stuff. And I think people underestimate the effect of what all that murdering on both sides would do to somebody's head. So she comes out of it like, I think I need to be an actual hero. And people need to see mutants being heroes because we did a lot of damage. I'm not saying it was unjustified, but it doesn't sometimes matter whether you're justified. Like, you see warfare, naked warfare. Sometimes you're not sitting back going, well, those guys deserve what they got. It's okay that these guys are killing the crap out of them. Sometimes it's just so brutal. You're like, holy shit. Holy shit. You know? So this is the group that makes up this version of X-Force. And yeah, I don't constantly have monologues about, oh, the glory of Krakoa or the hideousness of Krakoa, but each one of them is clearly feeling effects of this major event that just spent the last 5 years affecting everybody's life. Like, duh, right? So with Peter, it was more subtle because he's not talking. He's not expressing himself to anyone. There would have been a scene, more than a scene, where, remember, we got everyone being recruited into X-Force except Tay. In issue 11, you would have begun to see the recruitment of Tank. So the first question would have been answered as he's not a robot. You still would not have known who he was, but you would have known he's not a robot, right? And then 13, I think, is when he has this big fight with Gladius. Gladius kicks everybody's butt, by the way. Gladius is ridiculous. It's kind of good that he didn't make it into the book because now I can use him for something else. But Gladius was mopping the floor with these poor people, and it forced Peter to really step up. And in doing so, his costume gets damaged and all this stuff comes off. And you see that underneath it, he has metal skin and all this other stuff. But yeah, his journey is basically the fallout from Krakoa as well. I was made into a horrible weapon. I did very, very bad things. And even though I'm not intellectually, I know I'm not responsible, emotionally, I'm the one who did those things. So.
Now the other, like I said, because when you're thinking about Tank and you're thinking about the team and how they all interacted, how you brought them together, what judgment did you make, if you can view it that way, of Forge's ability to be a leader?
Oh, he sucks. Forge sucks. He's a terrible leader. Nobody should ever follow Forge to do anything. At the end of this, if I'd had my way at the end of this full run, everyone would hate Forge except Sage. They would never want to see him again. But not in that Beast is an evil bastard, he's turned evil. No, it's just like, dude, I'm not a cog in your freaking machine. I'm a person, and you should talk to me and treat me with respect. No, I don't care about that. I'm just trying to get the job done. So I'll be calling you when I need you. Don't call me. Oh, if I need you, I'll be calling you, and you will help me. Like, Forge was going to be John Constantine from Marvel Comics. He was going to be that guy you're like, oh, Christ, this fucking guy. Jesus Christ. And I have to help. God damn it. I hate this guy. Right? And there'd be like 2 or 3 people who are like, you have to understand about Forge. Right? Sage would have been one of those people. Right? But no, he was never meant to be a good leader. He was always supposed to be the guy you're like, wow, he will sacrifice any pawn to win. Right? And it wasn't like this sort of nefarious, like, well, if I do all this stuff and one day I'll be in charge and therefore everything will be good for everybody. It was like, no, immediate problem in front of me. What solves that problem? If it means I have to have one of these people die to solve this problem that would kill everyone on Earth, sorry about it. And that could be me too. Like, it's not like he's not going to sacrifice himself if necessary. It's just, so far it hasn't been necessary.
Yeah.
But he has no emotionality about, you see him, once he upgraded his powers, he's concerned that I'm kind of turned into, I'm just my powers now. Right? Like, I'm not a guy with powers. I'm powers that has a body.
Yeah.
Right? And as a result, I'm going to do things that means justify, the end justifies the means.
Now, assuming, let's say you had amazing editorial powers somewhere, and you were thinking about an epilogue, let's say, and you had Forge of the epilogue, would he have had the ability to reflect upon what he did and learn from what just happened in these 10 issues of X-Force?
No, what would, in a perfect aftermath of my run, however long it lasted, the team would always have broken up, always. Forge would have been in much worse shape in some ways, like, he would have been a much more tormented figure. Sage would opt to try to help him with that because she's intellectually capable of sort of understanding what he's going through and try to bring him back to some semblance of normal. Right? Because he did that for her. She feels she owes it to him, that kind of a vibe. And he would be obsessed with, the fractures don't stop just because Moses Magnum's not doing them. He's unable to not see essentially the web of, what do you call it, potentiality. So once he recognizes a problem, he must try to solve it. And that's a problem. So Sage is sort of both trying to help cure him get him back to normal, but also keeping him from causing trouble because he's kind of a loose cannon now. And I really think people have underestimated Forge in a lot of ways. He and Sage together are in their way as formidable as if Magneto and Storm teamed up. They are that dangerous of a couple. And I think they've been relegated to he's the tech guy and she's the smart chick. And I'm like, that is not how their powers were described. That is not what you told me their powers were when they were introduced. This is what you said their powers were. You should be terrified if either of these people is ever angry at you. Ever. I don't care what Omega. Forge can beat an Omega, even though he's not an Omega. How? It's how his power works.
Right.
We need to stop Phoenix. Really? Forge, build me a machine. Cool, I'm on it. And he will build you that machine. He can't not. That's his power. Now, yeah.
But does he have the ability to reflect on himself, though?
Nope.
So even after all these initiatives, he still would have learned the lesson of.
I think the idea that I was trying to get at was that each one of these superpowers has a downside. All these people have these powers and we think they're wonderful and all that. But there's like, as with chromosomes, there are other things that are attached, right? So you might get the tallness gene, but you also might be an albino because in your body, that's those two elements are attached to each other. You can't have one without the other. So I was never a big fan of secondary mutations, by the way, but I was always a fan of the idea that the mutation has drawbacks. So Forge's problem, he should not have amped up his powers. Before he did that, they were in his control. Now his powers are basically always at 11. And that means basically he's always seeing things in terms of where's the flaw and what is the fix. Everything, every person, all the time. That's crazy. So he's flooded with a kind of data that he never used to consciously have to think about. Now he has to consider it. It's a problem. But he also can't not do the thing. He must make the machine to fix the problem, whatever that machine may be. He's compelled, essentially. So yeah, he has moments of clarity in between problems, but more and more he'd have to completely isolate himself from exterior input, because the more input he's got, the more he's going to perceive a problem needing fixing. Right? Which is similar to what goes on with Sage. She is constantly processing data, constantly, and on a level that you and I can't imagine. All the things that our brains filter out, sights, smells, memories, sounds, everything that's happening in our environment that we are evolved to filter out, she doesn't have a filter. Everything is constantly coming in and her brain is going tick, 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 file, cross-check, constantly. If she's awake, even when she's not awake, that's happening. So she's uniquely set up to be the person to try to help Forge come back, and also to help him on his missions, right? This was never meant to be an instant like Jekyll and Hyde thing. It would be a gradual process so that they can have adventures together and grow closer as individuals, right? So that's, yeah.
And I kind of felt too, like issue 10 on some level was you cluing in the audience that if Forge was ever a bad guy, he'd be one scary fucking bad guy, considering what he could do on that side.
Yeah, he's terrifying. They're all, like, Forge and Sage are terrifying people. There's a thing that they wouldn't let me do, and I didn't have time to explain it, but when you learn something, when you hear a piece of music or something new happens to you, your brain chemistry resets. New pathways are literally forged in your brain in your short-term memory at first, but then if you keep doing it, you get long-term memory. And I thought, so what you're saying is there's a certain amount of sort of rapid programming going on pretty much at all times with humans. So if I'm Sage and I knew a particular sequence of sounds, I could cause your nervous system to freeze just by saying certain sounds in a row, right? Right? So at one point she was going to enter a room and say what sounds like gibberish, and everyone's just frozen for 10 minutes. And the editorial was like, is that one of her powers? And I'm like, it's not really a power. It's using information in a way that most people would not think to use this information. And they're like, nah, you're not doing that. That's too esoteric. We're not doing that. But that's the kind of crap that Sage can do. I also wanted to do the notion of she's like a super hacker. So she got multiple identities all over the world. Like if she showed up in her home in Greece, they'd be like, It's been a minute. What have you been doing? Oh, I'm photographing whales, as whatever. But she also has government clearance in multiple agencies. Like she can just walk into any building in any country. She speaks 100% of human languages, all of them, right? She has all martial arts in her head. The difference is, I explained this to somebody else, but she's not a practicing martial artist. So she knows what to do, but she has no muscle memory.
Hmm.
So if she's fighting a room full of thugs, they're probably outmatched. If she's fighting a martial arts master, she might get her ass kicked
Hmm.
because that person's doing it all the time,
Yeah.
right? So there's always a positive and a negative, a drawback, and a plus and a minus, basically.
Now another character that you mentioned that you introduced is very interesting was Moses Magnum, and it's someone who often has been peripheral to the X-Men world as a fan. At least a lot of mine is DC or primarily the Avengers side. I didn't know a lot about Moses Magnum. However, he seems to be the Ozymandias of the X-Men world, where he's kind of like the only way to solve this bullshit is just have a massive crisis that forces everyone to go, okay, let's do a bigger problem right now. He's
Yeah.
kind of like the mid ground between Magneto. It's sort of like if Magneto and Professor Xavier's philosophies had a baby. Most Magnum is somewhere in the middle because he's sort of
Um,
like Magneto, sort of like Professor X, and what he kind of sees.
his vibe is this. It's funny. As soon as I put it down, I was like, everyone's going to think this is Ozymandias. It's fair. The thing about Ozymandias is he was tricking the world. That was a lie. Everything he did was a lie. It was a big con game that he was doing. What Moses is doing is actually killing billions of people to make the millions who survive go, oh, we were wrong. Okay, so that's one. Two, if we'd had the again, I'm going to say this a bunch, I'm sure. If we'd had the extra 5 issues, those two plates where we talk about what Charles Xavier did, and then we talk about what Magneto did, we also would have had Cyclops and Utopia, and we also would have had the culmination Krakoa. We would have a page each. Each one of those pages would have been the front piece of the next 4 issues, right? And that would have been Moses explaining how he got to this conclusion and why he is thinking the way he's thinking. To Forge, who would have left in the end of issue 10 and joined the bad guys, theoretically. Um, I think Moses has been like a lot of the bad guys in Marvel Comics. Um, they're just there to be beat up by the heroes. He's never been given the kind of props. He's not alone. There are a billion characters like this. Joe Casey just used Baron Strucker in Weapon X-Men, I think. Baron Strucker is another one of these guys. It's like, okay, he's a Nazi. He's got the Satan claw. He has that weird Red Skull. He's like Red Skull light, right? Like if there is such a thing, right? Moses is like that minus a billion, right? He just shows up when you don't have anybody else to use, right? He's got Apocalypse gave him his powers, right? He's used them to create seismic effects, but on a massive, crazy, massive scale. Um, so massive that he kind of can't use his powers the same way Lila Tenney can't use hers in a regular basis because I can't pinpoint it. I can only make giant earthquakes, right? So unless that's what we wanted, I'm just a tough, smart guy. But the idea basically is we just went through 5 years of Krakoa, and whatever you like or don't like about Krakoa, the mutants behave not well. They did a whole bunch of stuff that you could justify. We need our own homeland. You guys treat us poorly. We're going to consolidate here. And they did a whole bunch of other stuff that was like, now, wait a minute. That's y'all flexing. You're just flexing now, right? I don't appreciate the flex, right? And if you're an outside person, a supervillain, let's say, or people think of as a supervillain, how are they better than me? How are they? In what way are they not villains? They call me a villain. They're trying to put me in jail. They're doing a whole bunch of the same crap. They're running guns. I'm a guns runner. I'm a gun runner. They're not villains, right? So if they're not, I'm not. Why are we having this conflict? They have destroyed New York umpteen times. They have destroyed so many places with fighting sentinels and all this stuff. And I'm just a bystander? No, 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 no. This needs to stop. Also, it's stupid. There's no such thing as Homo superior. That's a made up thing that Magneto made up. There's no such thing as that. Okay? You can call yourselves whatever you want. There is no biological thing called Homo superior. You're just mutated humans. That's what mutant means. You're a mutant human. So if we're all humans, let's get our shit together.
Mm.
Right? Now you're all stupid. You need a smack with a 2x4. So sadly, a whole bunch of you gotta die. That's why I'm a supervillain. Because the next step is always crazy, right? Everything you set up to that point was exactly right, but your solution is crazy. Why would you go there? Right? Well, nothing else has worked. Have you tried the process? You know, so I wanted to put him back on the stage in a way. Claremont did that with him. He had basically just been an arms dealer prior to his arrival in X-Men, say 98, maybe? No, that was a burn, so it had to be post 100. So let's say 142 for no reason. 112, something like that. But anyway, he had not done anything, and he showed up with superpowers. And people were like, how does he have superpowers? Wasn't he just an arms dealer? A tech guy? Now he's got superpowers. And then later they retconned it that Apocalypse had found him and given him these superpowers, which were ridiculous, right? So, and then he popped up a couple more times and always in weird clothing and spouting some nonsense. And it was basically a bargain basement. Like, I can't use Dr. Doom, I'll use Moses. And I was like, my whole thing is always, I think you've heard me say this before, I don't like superheroes or villains that overlap. I don't like 5,000 Flashes. I don't like 10,000 Supermans or a whole Bat family. I hate that. I hate that. Okay? Every superhero should be unique, and every villain should be unique. The Red Skull is not Dr. Doom. Right? When I see Dr. Doom coming, I'm scared in a completely different way than when I see the Red Skull coming. In the same way when I see Jason Voorhees. All three of those people are scary as hell, but in completely different ways, right? So with Moses, I wanted to give him some agency, a real organization behind him that wasn't nonsense, and an agenda that one could understand. And it's a crazy one, but it's one you can understand, right? I think this, therefore this. Simple. Now, if people want to reduce that down to Ozymandias' plan, please understand, there's no way Alan Moore did not read a book called The Lathe of Heaven, written by Ursula Le Guin. And in that, a character called George Orr, who has control over all of reality, but not really of himself, is essentially coerced or forced. Get rid of the war on Earth, he has said, told. And his solution to that is aliens attack the Earth and everyone unifies to fight the aliens. There's no way Alan Moore did not read that book. There's no way. There's another short story, I forget the title of it, where a group of basically industrialists and Tony Stark level geniuses faked the arrival of Martians on Earth, but they made it seem like it was a secret so that spy organizations would look into it. And what they would find was, these are aliens trying to take over the Earth. We've got to get together. Spetsnaz, the KGB, everybody has to get together and stop these freaking aliens. And then you find out at the end, it was just these industrialists, because these guys are going to blow up the world with these atomic weapons. We can see it coming. So we're going to fake the idea that clandestine Martians have invaded the Earth already. And now they're going to focus on that, but they're going to all be together.
Yeah.
Right? That was a science fiction trope for a long time before Ozymandias, and it's a scary one, because all you need is everybody who thinks they're the good guy and is ruthless. They can do some awful crap.
Well, the interesting too, though, is that when as I'm gonna say the name always here, as Mandius, as however you pronounce it, when he did what he wanted to do,
Yep.
he did it secretly. So in many ways, you assume, depending on how things played out, he could be like, hey guys, let me help your situation. I'd be like,
oh yes, he was also completely self-interested.
Right.
Yes.
Moses, there's no way he's gonna be able to hide that he's the one behind it. Is he ready to be viewed as the villain in a world where the humans?
I think that kind of megalomaniac thinks everyone will applaud him when it's all said and done.
Gotcha.
Right? Like, remember, the interim period is monsters flood the world. They're killing their kaijus and all kinds of demons, everything you can think of. We have to fight them off. Ultimately, my calculation says you will win, but the only way you're going to win is because mutants and humans got together. But once you won, you'll have this unified society. So either you will find out all this about me and thank me for having put you through this, because I'm crazy, I think that might happen, or you hate me, but it was worth it. right? Fine for you to hate me. Doesn't matter. I won. You're all together now. So,
Hmm.
yay me. I'm still the best, says Moses. So yeah, so that was with Moses. Um, I really liked. I just like the idea of those kind of characters being brought forth. Like, as you see, if you look at, I have a Patreon page which is free. You don't have to pay me anything. Where I do annotations for this stuff, and this book was the one thing it kept from the original pitch was I wanted to do a deep dive into the landscape and the history of Marvel 616. And so there's lots of weird little Easter eggs all the way through this thing about things that happened before the Fantastic Four even showed up, before Spider-Man showed up, characters that existed in the old monster comics, just weird stuff. And Moses is one of those off to the left. If I didn't do anything with Moses, who was going to do anything with Moses ever?
Hmm.
Nobody. Nobody's thinking about Moses. So why not Moses is my point. Like there's plenty of villains. Why not him? You know?
Now another character that you brought out of maybe the woods, as it were, was Dr. Avery.
Yeah.
The brute, the brute who walks.
Yeah.
Now, can you kind of break down a little bit of where he? I mean, obviously, I know he came out older comics, but um, where this version kind of came from you, and why you, and where you going? Was there more to him later on, and would he have been? Was there a road where he eventually figured out how to control the brute and
Nope.
become an
He's
expert?
a nope. He's a monster. He's a tragic monster. Um, the idea was it didn't have to be specifically Dr. Avery, but when I found him, I was like, it's definitely you. Um, I wanted it to be from something from like Where Monsters Dwell or from the original Journey into Mystery. Like these are basically Twilight Zone episodes in comic book form, generally with a monster and generally with some poor bastard who's either turning into the monster or having to fight the monster or both. Um, and Avery was sort of a proto Hulk. Jack and Stan did not start working together on Fantastic Four. They'd been working together for many years on prior to 1963 Marvel, right? So um, he was sort of like a proto version of Bruce Banner. He even kind of looks like Bruce Banner in the original comic. And the transformation from normal scientist guy into giant rampaging King Kong, you know, kind of the same. So I wanted him, but the vibe was from like I took a lot of my cues from old X-Men books. When we first started talking about shifting from what I had originally planned to being X-Force, I was like, well, how am I going to do a Team X book? Right? I'm definitely not going to do the killers. Like these characters are not the bloodthirsty Wolverine, Omega Red, Deadpool. Like I'm never writing that team, folks. So if you see my name on a book like that, you can assume what you want is assassins. You should just keep walking because I'm never writing that. But when Alpha Flight first met the X-Men, um, they just rolled over them because the X-Men did not see them coming. They just came in and started smacking folks around and beating them like redheaded stepchildren, as they used to say when I was a kid, right? And I just love the vibe of that because you were just getting this sort of rapid fire, pardon me, you were getting this rapid fire introduction into these characters you've never seen before, like at all, ever. You've never seen them before. And this version of X-Force, it needed its own brotherhood of evil mutants,
Hmm.
right? It needed its own team of people who disliked them personally, who they disliked personally, who would, in theory, keep popping up, causing them trouble from time to time. And each one of them had a particular vendetta against one or more of our team, right? So by the end of this book, La Diabla really does not like Betsy Braddock at all. Really does not like Sage at all. Okay, like you theoretically, they have made an enemy for life in all three of those women have an enemy for life, right? Um, and so he was going to function as the Magneto of this little pocket of this version of X Force. He would have been their Magneto, um, and the solution, as I said, would have been his brotherhood, except it's made up of all sorts of people. It's not just humans. It's not just mutants, mutated humans, armor bearing humans. You know, no aliens. I think there's no aliens involved in the solution because it's a very human problem. But basically anyone who agreed with Moses' thesis is in the solution and is willing to be secretive and not care about human life, like not care about collateral damage. And they would have been they would have been they would have also so the brute that walks is basically on her leash. The best he's got out of it is the beginnings of control of himself, but her alchemy is stronger than that. All Rachel did was give him the ability to shut himself down sometimes. You know, a tragic figure. I think that's been lost. Like not every. I don't think any of the solution are redeemable, except Dr. Avery, and his only redemption is that one day he'll die.
Mm.
Like he can't cure himself. There's no cure, right? There's only I'm off by myself, away from other people, or I'm dead, right?
Now,
This chick has me on a leash.
I mean, as you mentioned, like the Hulk, who has that savage side, but savage side still knows enough to do good things, and Banner's personality is at least strong enough to be like, "Hey, let's do good things," because you crazy angry thing. The Brute who walks, it's so far extreme. Is it because Dr. Avery is such a weak person that he can't control, or is that the Brute's so extremely bad that it's impossible?
That's what it is. It's the second thing. We didn't do this exactly, and I think partly because there's always a little translation error between what is drawn and what is written, and also what is conceived and what is written. My idea basically was the brute who walks destroys anything is in his line of sight. He is a natural disaster. There's no real thought in there. He's not angry per se. He's just an engine of destruction, and you deploy him while you're standing behind him, because if he swivels and looks at you, he will treat you exactly the same way he treats the enemy.
Hmm.
In practice, that couldn't work exactly that way, because then how could La Diabla? She'd always be fighting him, so she has to have some kind of control over him. But theoretically, you could have a story where they snap her leash and he's just free, and then he's like, "Oh, great, he's free!" Right? It's like, no, he's just going to kill all of us now, like like that. So you could have told a story like that. So yeah, I just wanted him to be a tragic figure, and it also shows how cruel she is. Right? She is not a nice person. Um, these are people who are happy to be villainous. They're not. I don't like redeemable villains. I don't do that. I don't believe in that. I don't take, there's no anti-heroes in Geoff Thorne stories. You're a hero or you're a villain, right? You might have good reasons for being a villain, but I'm not on your team. There's no sympathy for the devil. You're just a bastard, and you either go to jail or you die. That's it. Those are your fates, you know? And I wanted a real opposite number that could really give any team with Rachel on it, and frankly, any team with Betsy on it, that's a powerful team. So you needed somebody who could really give them fits. So that's it.
I mean, I think it's very interesting. And another character that's in the books that got introduced, I think in the crossover is Pastor as well, who once again is another character who I hadn't heard of at all, and I'm kind of was learning about him as he appears in the book. So when you're thinking about Pastor, once again, sometimes in my brain, I'm always in the X-Men world where characters kind of come in, they go out, they come in, come out. But a character comes in, he's going to be, if he's good, he's on the team or something like that. So kind of go into a little bit of what the plan was for Pastor.
John Ray. Yes. Well, um, it's the same deal. I have an affinity for characters that are basically used to tell somebody else's story. They only exist because you needed some other people to be in a Wolverine story, and you needed somebody to be able to get killed by the bad guy so Wolverine could get mad about it, basically. And I get it, but I don't like it. So he got killed in a stupid way from my point of view, or rephrase that. He got killed in a useless way. He was killed by a possessed Wolverine, the Helverine, and left for dead. So an off-panel sort of story idea I had was, in her many travels as a personal clandestine operative, Sage is having some Lara Croft adventures y'all don't know about. She comes across this lab, and who happens to be on this lab in there is the apparently revived corpse of John Wraith, who she's like, "Aren't you John Wraith? You don't need to be on this table with these freaks torturing you, right?" It's like, "No, I would love to leave." So she gets him out, and he owes her a favor. In his backstory, he had sort of been on the Weapon X team with Wolverine and a couple of the other guys. What's his name? Maverick. and a couple of the other guys, and they were a hit squad basically. And then he had rejected that and become a pastor, right? And it was all backstory stuff. And then he got killed, so it was like, well, he's dead. And I was like, when I read them though, again, I'm not criticizing the writers. They were telling their stories. I just felt there was something there that never really got fully addressed. So he's alive again, and he's basically rejected a life of murder, right? But he owes Sage a favor. He has his power set. One of the fun things about him in those original stories was he kept his power secret. No one knew exactly what his power was. He would just sort of be there and handling his business and then not be in trouble when it was all over. Like, what is he? How is he doing this? Right? His has no power signature. Right? All the other teleporters have they go bamf, or there's a giant ring that lights up, or something to signal their comings and going. Wraith does not have that. He's just there, or he's just not. And I thought that was terrifying and kind of cool. And I'm not a believer in spiritual things, but if you're devout enough to quit your job and then your job of murdering people and then become a pastor, you're fairly devout. And I thought it would be kind of fun, a la Pulp Fiction, for him to occasionally not quote them, but cite Bible verses as his motivation for whatever he was doing at the time. And from I don't know if it's peevish or whatever, go look it up. I don't care. I'm not trying to make you be a Christian or anything, but go look it up. And that's where he came from. He would have joined the team. He would have been a full-fledged member of the team. He's got an ironic view of this stuff because his version of superheroics was basically being on a hit squad until he quit. So he's not really a big fan of unnecessary conflicts, the sort of constant fighting that the X people seem to always be fighting each other as much as anybody. He's like, later for that. But you guys need to get your heads out of your butts. Like, seriously, come down to my church. I'll talk you around, And I just thought he would have had a nice flavor. Plus, he's got a backstory with Sage that none of the others do. And he uses his powers creatively. He doesn't just teleport. He teleports in order to do things. He uses the teleportation itself to do things, which I always think is smart. And that's something I give up to the earlier writers. He was always smart with his ability. He's just a fun flavor to have added. There would have been, like, we lost Surge for a minimum of 10 issues or 8 issues, right? So I wanted to balance out the team with a new member. He would be with them but not wearing the uniform, basically. So for all intents and purposes, he's on the team. And then if it had made it past 30, then of course he would have worn the uniform. But he's sort of an anti-Wolverine character in a book like this. Like, he's the outsider. He's the not part of the team. He goes his own way, but it's not because he's a vicious, cold-blooded killer, right? So I'm not trying to work out my red ledger, right? So I just like him. And he made me smile, and he's funny. He's ironic. He takes it seriously, but he's almost in the voice of a regular person, right? Like, what are you doing? Why are we not running right now? Why are you still fighting these people? Did you send me into that thing? Why are the Summers brothers always kicking the crap out of each other? What's that even about? Who cares? Right? You're like, if I didn't owe you this favor, I wouldn't even be doing this. This is just nonsense, And also the idea that there's a character on the team that cares more about one member of the team than he cares about any of the other members of the team. So, like, when in doubt, he's rescuing Sage. Right? Sorry about it, the rest of you, but Sage is definitely getting out alive. I promise you that. Right. So that was his whole thing. He was just there for that.
I really feel like the book has just so much potential. Can you hint a little bit of what this book was going to be?
Yes. All right. So the next 5 issues would have been, who are the solution? So chapter 1 is, who's this new X-Force? Chapter 2 is, those fractures were not, someone's behind them. Big question. Get the answer at the end of that, and then the last bit is, who is the solution guys? What is the deal with this? Right? Why would they exist? Why would anyone be doing this horrible thing? And so each issue would have been Reveal of Colossus. This is all while fighting and picking up clues. Reveal of Colossus as Colossus. We start to see Surge sort of rebuilding herself in a way, but it's oblique in that you don't know if the person is just feeling real grief about the fact that she's gone, or did she actually manifest in some way? We don't know. And we find out how Rachel knows that when she goes boom, she's going to kill people within a 100-mile radius. How does she know that? Right? That what had happened is there's a town, I didn't decide where it was going to take place, but post her resurrection, she mind wiped a town full of people accidentally. And then she and Betsy sort of put it back together again, sort of. So those people are essentially okay. But that was basically when they decided, okay, I'm going to be the person who carries your extra weight until you finish fixing yourself. Right. We would have gotten and then we finally got to the end. Oh, we would have revealed that Xanda was Xanda right around the same time that Colossus comes out of his thing. So she would have spent more time being herself than just at the very end going, it was always me. All right. Yes, I know, too fast. I get it. And then at the end of all that, they would have technically still broken up. Right. So at the end of after they defeat the solution and the solution gets away and it's all over with, basically what happened at the end of the book, as is, some version of that would have still happened. Betsy's been through with him since Cambodia. So this was like, done. I'm now done. Me and my girl are going home now. Rachel, you can stay if you want. I'm out. Okay. And then the next arc, which I don't want to get too deeply into because there's still a pending pitch. So some version of it would have become the Betsy Braddock-led book. There is an otherworld incursion of some kind, and you find out what it was that Betsy was alluding to, why she didn't want to go back to otherworld unless absolutely necessary, how she left it with her, who is her, and what was the problem, right? We would have found out all of that, and the otherworld incursion is a really bad thing. I think one of the problems with the Captain Britain character, and I think ultimately the problem with the Green Lantern character, is that it's difficult for an ongoing book set in the present day to focus on another planet.
Yeah.
Right, or the galaxy at large, or an extra dimensional conflict, right? If there's any direct connection to Earth as it is, then what I want to know is what the hell's going on Earth. I don't really care what's going on in Asgard. Like, I care a bit, but I really only care because of how it affects Thor. And kind of Thor lives next door to me at home. He doesn't live in Asgard. He lives in Midgard with me. So how's that going to affect Midgard, right? So I think constantly taking Betsy away from Earth into Otherworld is ultimately less interesting than elements of Otherworld pushing into Earth and having to deal with it. So some version of that would have been the next 15 issues of X-Force, through which we would have gotten a conversation with Peter. Why were you pretending to be this other guy all this time? Surge is now this new being made out of esoteric energy. What does that mean? She would, by the way, have stayed in constant energy form. She would have figured a way to at least appear to be a normal person. She ain't never taken those gauntlets off, but she wasn't doing that before. So, her silhouette would have changed slightly. Sage and Forge would have come to more of a meeting of them. Oh, Forge would have told them, I don't care. That's Otherworld. I don't care. Like, I got stuff to do on Earth. Bye. Right? And they would have been, God, you're a dick. We all showed up just to help you do this other thing. Now I need you to do this. Nah, sorry. That doesn't affect, nothing to do with me. That's some other biz. Don't care. And then he would have showed up anyway because something he was dealing with forced him to deal with their thing. They're like, oh, now you show up. Well, yeah, now it's because it's convenient. No, because it's necessary for this other thing I'm doing. Like, what a dick you are. Right. And Sage would have just been more and more coming into her own as kind of the way she was in Extreme X-Men, I guess, is the closest analogy. More like the field leader, much more scary to everybody else. How does her quote unquote computer brain actually work? Like, I wanted to do this whole thing where someone tries to invade her brain mentally. Like, why? Like, oh, you gave up her telepathy. Why would you get rid of her telepathy? I'm like, yeah, good luck. Good luck in the maze of Sage's mind, telepaths. Enjoy your stay inside her head. You won't be getting out again unless she lets you out. Right? She didn't need to be a telepath. She does not need to be a telepath. No telepath would want to go in her head twice at all. Right? Let me out. Why would I let you out? You're just going to attack me again, Emma Frost. You can't do this. I think I can. And also, she could leave behind in her own head an exact copy of her operating system Sage to talk to and annoy whoever she had trapped in there. And while still going about her full business outside in the real, like, Sage is terrifying. Sage is terrifying. So we would have had all that. And at the end of it, Betsy would have, one way or another, resolved the whole Psylocke Captain Britain. All that would have been resolved. I don't want to say how, because that's part of the pitch, and part of whether they'll accept it or not is that resolution. There's a lot of, it's weird. Like, I'm still a fan. Like, whenever I'm not writing the book, I'm still a fan, right? So there's a lot of fan discussion about Kanan and Betsy sharing the Psylocke name. Betsy was Psylocke before the whole body switch deal, but we spent 30 years looking at this Japanese woman being Psylocke. So in the minds of a lot of fans who came in after the switch, that's what Psylocke looks like. So who's going to carry the name? There's old school people like me are like, well, she had it first. She should be Psylocke, right? Young people are like, screw you, old dude. This is Psylocke. So Quanon Psylocke. And Betsy's sort of in this weird nebulous place where she's Captain Britain, but that should be Brian, right? Brian's Captain Britain, brother, right? There's all that conversation's going on. I did figure a way to thread the needle, but if Marvel doesn't agree that that's the way to do it, then the book doesn't happen. So, and I think it'd be actually pretty cool. But if the pitches I have, and Colossus, I don't want to talk about that. Wait for after the vigil and we'll discuss.
So I guess the big question then is, what is next? Is it like, what is next in not just the X-Force world that you may be living in the X world? What else is next for you?
What's next for me is the top secret project that I'm working on in my normal job, which hopefully will get announced in the near future. It will be very big comic book news, even though it isn't a comic book. Rephrase that. I don't know if it'll be very big news. It's big to me. But it's something unexpected that kind of came out of left field, which I'm having a really great time doing. And I think people will be very happy with what it is. But it is not in the X-verse at all. It's something completely over here. But you will recognize it when you see it very easily. So that's sort of eating up all my time right now for the last, 2 years almost now.
Wow.
So while we were doing X-Force, this other thing was really the giant dominating thing. And you'll see why. And then there's another thing that's already been announced, but my participation in it has not been announced, which in August, I guess, or June, my participation will become officially like public announced. So those things I'm very proud of, ridiculously proud of, both sort of comic book adjacent. NDAs prevent me from saying too much because I'm not secretly trying to tell you what it is, but that's what it is. I've got a book coming out in the winter called Watch the Night, which is book 2. It's the first full novel in my Grim Arcana series. The rest have been novellas. There have been 4 novellas compiled right now in Into the Mystic, which is the collection of all of the individual shorts. And then that'll be followed up this year with a novel called Watch the Night, which is the first novel involving all these characters. That's fun. And I've been talking with some folks about doing a YA graphic novel, original graphic novel. Not sure exactly I'm not a big crowdfunder. People have heard me whine about this before. I'm just too lazy for crowdfunding. It's hard enough work doing all this other stuff. But if it comes down to it, I may do a crowdfund of it. I've already talked to a illustrator about it, and if I can scrape the money together to pay what he's worth, then we will do it one way or another. And it's a YA superpowers, but not superheroes. Um, just fun. I want to do some comics that are not mired in continuity, that there's no controversy, no one can make controversy about. Like, well, they're gay now. Like, well, they were invented to be gay, so shut up. Like, whatever. Um, uh, I just there's a lot. There's a lot. I always wanted to write big two comics, and thank God, 12-year-old Jeff can now sleep well. Shut up, go to sleep. I've done that. I like it. I will do it again if asked, obviously. But there's just a lot of baggage that's attended upon doing that, and I just need the freedom of let me make up my own superheroes for a minute. Let me tell my own stories for a minute. Um, and I think people will be very pleased with the result of me without an editor is something I think everybody should at least once in your life be exposed to that.
Well,
What is that here?
listen, I want to thank you so much for coming back to the show. And like you said, fifth time's the charm. So feel free to come back.
Sure, anytime you want.
It's
Anytime you
been an
want.
absolute pleasure talking with you, sir.
I mean, I love talking about comics. Like, as soon as I'm not writing a book, I'm just a fan again. So all the things I can't say and can't think when I'm writing, I'm not allowed to think like a fan when I'm writing. Like, I don't let myself think that way. I'm just thinking about what writers think about. But as soon as I'm done, literally click, okay. You see that absolute flash? What the hell was going on with that? So I'm happy to talk about it. I love it. And the business side of it, stuff that we were talking about off camera, it's depressing. I figure the more I talk about it, I'm not going to do it, but maybe somebody I talk to will come up with a solution because there's a lot of problems that could be solved if somebody had the will to do them. And I think even the people who would consider themselves enemies of mine or people I don't necessarily like, there is one through line in a lot of the criticism of the comic book industry is that the reasons it's broken have nothing, they don't necessarily have anything to do with the book themselves. They have to do with the way the books are being made and distributed. Money should be spent differently. Distribution should be done differently. The pay scales for the people involved should be different, should be more. Profit share for subsequent, we're going to turn into a movie or a video game. There should be some profit share for the people making up this stuff. It doesn't have to be 1% would be a life-changing event in every comic book creator's life. If you had 1% of the Winter Soldier, 1%, you know what, 0.5%, okay, the amount of money that those projects make, that 0.5% would be a life-changing event. And you can afford it. You can. You don't want to, but you can. And then we give the incentive to the people at the ground floor who are down in the trenches making up the IP you're farming to do really amazing crap because they'd be earning at the level they should be earning.
Yeah.
Right. That's a conversation that no one who can do anything about it is having. They should do something about it. It's not fair, and it's ultimately bad business.
Yeah.
You're killing your, if it's a farm, you're killing the place where you grow your crops. Whatever you call it before you put crops at your fields, you're killing them. Right? Slowly, but for sure.
Yeah.
And I don't want them to die. I've loved comics half a century now. Right? I'm 50 plus. I've been reading them since I was 5. So half 100 years, guys, I've been on this. I don't want it to go anywhere. And it will. You're in the process of killing it. So stop it.
Well, like I said, feel free to come back. We can even have an episode if you want that's just off topic, as it were.
Yeah, let's just go. That conversation we just had was great. Like, I'm surprised we weren't recording it.
Yeah, no, after we were talking and we kept going, I was like, I would like to have had this for the audience.
Yeah. So, yeah, anytime you want, obviously. I'm sure you'll want to at least, my participation in the visual is small, but you may want to talk about it.
Wait, when's it coming out?
in the Hellfire Vigil. I don't know what the date is. A couple of months, right? Summertime, I would guess. So not a month away, 2 months, June maybe, July,
So maybe we should revisit in June.
whenever you want, whenever
All
you
right.
want.
Very cool.
Right. My schedule is much freer now that I'm not doing 3 things at once. I'm only doing 2. So yeah,
Perfect. Thank you
cool,
so much,
man.
Mr. Thorne.